Expand your vocabulary with our Core 2000 Words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free Chinese ebook before it's gone.
Hey, 大家好，我是马燕如。Hi everybody, I am 燕如嘛。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语 The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned how to introduce ourselves in Chinese. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to use good manners as we thank people. 准备好了吗？ Are you ready? 我们开始吧。So let's start. There are several ways to thank someone. Let's start with the easiest. It is just one word. 谢谢。谢谢。谢谢 means thanks. Another slightly more emphatic way of saying thank you is 谢谢你. Do you see what we changed? We just added 你 to the end. 你. As you may recall, this is a word for you. It's like saying thank you. 谢谢你。谢谢你。When you really want to express thanks to someone, there is a different way to do it. 太谢谢了。太谢谢了。As we've seen before, 谢谢 means thanks. Here, we've got a new word 太, which means too, as in too much of something. 太 and another 了 together, this sentence is like thanks too much. 太谢谢了。How about the response? It's easy. Let me show you the most basic way to do it. 不用谢。不用谢。用 here means need. 用 Putting the 不 before it makes it negative. 不 Altogether, it's 不用 no need. 不用 Finally, we add 谢 which means thanks. So it means something like no need to thank. We use it just like the English you're welcome. So when someone says 谢谢 to you, you can simply reply with 不用谢. Now it's time for English tips. Although 谢谢 is simple, it can be used in both formal and informal situations with just about anyone, anywhere, and at any time. But actually in China, we don't usually say 谢谢 to our families and our close friends. The expression, while applied, creates a feeling of distance. But it doesn't mean that we take thankfulness for granted. Instead, we will do something else in the future to show our gratitude. Do you know how to say see you later in Chinese? Here is a hint. I've been saying it at the end of every episode. In our next lesson, we'll go over this in detail and talk about other ways to say goodbye and hello in Chinese. Until then, 再见! Hey, 大家好，我叫马燕如。Hey everybody, I'm 燕如嘛。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语 The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned how to show gratitude by saying 谢谢. In this lesson, we will learn some of the most common greetings used in China. 准备好了吗？ Are you ready? 我们开始吧。So, let's start. The most commonly used greeting is 你好. 你好. You may remember this from lesson 1. 你好 means hi, hello, and how do you do? It's a slightly formal expression though, so just use it at work or similar occasions. Don't use it with your family and friends. The informal hello is sure to be familiar to you. You probably use it every day already. hey, hey. If it sounds familiar, it's because it's just like English hey, but make sure to say it with the right Mandarin tone. Hey. When you want to greet someone in the morning, you can also say 早啊,早啊. It's very commonly used, but it's slightly informal. What about when we leave? What should we say? 再见. This very common expression is similar in meaning to the English see you again. 再见. This is goodbye. Though simple, it can be used in almost all occasions. Now you can greet people in many different ways in Chinese. Let's review them all again. When meeting people for the first time or in a formal occasion, 你好. When meeting friends or family members, you can say, hey. In the early morning, you can say, 早啊. When leaving, no matter whether it's a formal or informal situation, 再见. It's easy, isn't it? Now it's time for Yanru's tips. As you know, there are more and more Chinese starting to learn English. This has started to affect the language. Just like how you can say hey instead of 你好, you can also say bye bye instead of 再见. So if you forget how to say 你好 and 再见, you can use the easy heys and bye byes and people will understand you with no problem. During the next lesson, we'll learn the meaning of the phrase 你会说英语吗? Do you already know it? I will be waiting to talk about it with you in our next 3分钟汉语 lesson. 再见。Hey, 大家好，我叫马燕如。Hey everybody, I am Yanru Ma. Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned the most common forms of greetings in Chinese. Do you remember them? In this lesson, we're going to learn a very useful phrase. Do you speak English? If you find yourself in a situation where you need assistance in English, this phrase can be a lifesaver. But because you're asking it in Chinese, you can be sure that everyone will understand what you are saying, even if the answer is no. Here is a common, slightly informal way to say it. 你会说英语吗? 你会说英语吗? Let's break that down. You, 你 can, 会 speak, 说 English, 英语 question mark particle 吗? You will notice the word 你 in the beginning of the sentence. Remember that this is the way to say you. The next word 会 is like the English can. Then we have the verb 说, which means to speak. Next up is 英语, the word for English. And last we have 吗. This is used to ask a question. It works just like a question mark. Put it at the end of the sentence with a low tone. Altogether, it's 你会说英语吗? To learn how to properly use verbs like 会, please look at our Absolute Beginner series on ChineseClass101.com. You can find very detailed grammar lessons and resources there. We are now going to make this sentence formal. First, we need to use the formal version of you, which is 您. Even if we change the word for you, we don't need to change the verb 会. Everything stays the same. 您会说英语吗? 您会说英语吗? Adding 请问, the sentence becomes even more polite. It means something like excuse me here. Altogether, it's 请问您会说英语吗? The responses you will receive could be one of these three. 会 yes, 会 or 会我会说一点 yes, I can speak a little. 会我会说一点 or 我不会说 No, I don't. 我不会说 Since this last one is a negative statement, we need to say the negative word 不 before the verb 会. It's just that easy. Now it's time for Yenru's tips. For those of you who are not only English speakers, you can use this question with any language you need. More and more Chinese people are studying other languages, so maybe you will get lucky. Just replace 英语 with 意大利语 for Italian, 俄语 for Russian, 西班牙语 for Spanish, 德语 for German. This lesson we mentioned the expression 请问. But did you know that this could also be used as an apology? In the next lesson, we will learn this and other ways to apologize in Chinese. I will see you in our next 3分钟汉语 lesson. 再见。Hey, 大家好，我叫马燕如。Hey, everybody, I am 燕如嘛。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语 the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned the phrase 你会说英语吗? Do you speak English? We mentioned the word 请问, which means excuse me in formal Chinese. But this isn't the only way to say excuse me or I'm sorry in Chinese. You will have to use different words in different situations. Don't worry, it will be very easy. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to make a proper apology in Chinese. The expression 请问 that we learned in the last lesson is used when asking a question. For example, 请问天安门在哪儿? Excuse me, where is 天安门? 请问天安门在哪儿? The first word is 请问 or excuse me. Then comes a place. In this case, 天安门. Next we have 在. This is a word like the English look at it. Last we have 哪儿, which means where. Altogether, it means something like excuse me, 天安门 located where? 请问天安门在哪儿? An informal way to say excuse me is 不好意思。不好意思。不 we have seen before and means something like not. Next we have 好 which means good. Finally we have 意思 which means thought. Altogether, we get something that means not good thought, but which perhaps could be translated as it is thoughtless of me. 不好意思。We can use 不好意思 when asking a question or when apologizing. All of these phrases can be used for either excuse me or I'm sorry. But if you really want to apologize for something, it might be better to use a different phrase. That phrase is 对不起. It means I am sorry and can be used in both formal and informal situations. 对不起. This is so common that you should learn it all as one phrase and not worry about breaking it down. 对不起. This is used as often as the phrase 谢谢 is to show appreciation. Now it's time for Yenru's tips. Please remember that in Chinese, if you accidentally bump into someone, we don't say excuse me, 请问. Instead say 对不起. Are you able to count in Chinese? In the next lesson, we will learn the numbers in Chinese from 1 to 10. I'll be waiting for you in our next 3分钟汉语 lesson. 再见。Hey, 大家好，我叫马燕如。Hi, everybody, I am 燕如嘛。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语 The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned some words used when apologizing in Chinese, including 请问 and 不好意思. In this lesson, we're going to learn numbers in Chinese. Yes, numbers, 数字 from 1 to 10, and you're going to learn them in only 3 minutes. 3分钟. Are you ready? Let's start. 一二三四五六七八九十 Okay, now repeat after me. I will say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 一二三四五六七八九十 Great job! What is before 一? Do you know the word for 0? It's 零 You don't have any more excuses. You can now give your friends your cell phone number in Chinese. Let's try it together. We will use the phrase 我的号码是 which means my number is 我的号码是13094250637. Can you read it by yourself? 13094250637. Perfect! Now it's time for Yenru's tips. When we talk about numbers like telephone numbers, bus numbers, and so on, we pronounce 1 as 1. For example, a bus number 101 is pronounced 101, and you can even use 1 instead of 一 when saying phone numbers. Try it when you are in China. I'm sure that it will impress people a lot. Do you know the Chinese word for 100? In the next lesson, we're going to learn the numbers from 11 to 100 in Chinese. Your task now is to practice the numbers we studied in this lesson, from 1 to 10. 再见。嘿，大家好，我叫马燕如。Hi everybody, I'm 燕如马。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 3分钟汉语 The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned the numbers from 1 to 10. Have you forgotten? Here I will tell you again. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. And now let's continue from 11. 11 11 12 12 13 13 14 14 15 15 16 16 17 17 18 18 19 19 And finally we have 20 20 Okay, now repeat after me. I will say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 These numbers may seem harder to remember, but they're actually very simple. Just take the numbers you learned in the last lesson and put a 10 in front of them. So saying 11 is like saying 10-1. Saying 12 is like saying 10-2, and so forth. Then when you get to 20, you just say 2-10. Isn't that easy? Let's not stop at 20. Counting up to 100 is super easy. Now I will give you the tens. 30 30 40 40 50 50 60 60 70 70 80 80 90 90 100 100 Memorizing these numbers is incredibly easy. Notice that all tens start with 10 and all tens end with 10. To remember what 10 means, of course, it is the word for 10. So actually, all you have to remember are the numbers from 1 to 10. Then for 100, you have to learn one new word, 百. What do you put in front of it? 一, which is 1. So it really is like saying 100. The last thing to learn in this lesson is how to form compound numbers above 20. This is super easy. Take the tens and simply add the numbers you learned in the previous lesson. Let's try it out. How would you say 56 in Chinese? Let's take it step by step. 50 is 50, and then add 6, 6. 56. It's done. Isn't that easy? Let's make another number, for instance, 98. Take 90, 90, and add 8, 8, 98. Now it's time for Yenru's tips. After only 2 lessons, you're now able to count to 100 in Chinese. But do you know how to say years like 1950? You might think it would be long and difficult, but actually, it's super easy. You don't have to say 1950, which is 1950, or 1950, which is 1950. All that you need to do is to say it number by number, like telephone numbers. So it could be 1950, 1950, and then 年, which means year, 1950年. In the next lesson, we are going to put your number knowledge to use. Do you have all the skills you need to go shopping in China? If not, I will be waiting for you in our next 3分钟汉语 lesson. 再见。 Hey, 大家好，我叫马燕如。Hi everybody, I'm 燕如嘛。Welcome to ChineseClass101.com's 三分钟汉语 the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Chinese. In the last lesson, we learned how to count in Chinese. I hope you spend some time practice the numbers because they will come in handy for this lesson. We're going to learn how to go shopping in China. Before we go, you need to know how to say how much is this. 这个多少钱？这个多少钱？ Are you ready to go shopping in China? Let's go! You see something you like and want to ask the shopkeeper how much it costs. The first thing to say is 请问. Do you remember what that means? Excuse me. 请问这个多少钱？请问这个多少钱？ If we want to be more specific when asking how much is this, or refer to a certain type of object, it's super easy. We just need to add the noun. For example, 帽子 a hat. 请问这个帽子多少钱？ Excuse me, how much is this hat? 请问这个帽子多少钱？ Another example, 杯子 cup. 请问这个杯子多少钱？ Excuse me, how much is this cup? 请问这个杯子多少钱？ At this point, the shopkeeper can answer by saying 这个, which means this, and then the cost. For example, 这个55元. What number is 55? I'm not telling you. Okay, it's 55. It costs 55 yuan. If you think it's too expensive, say 能便宜点吗? This means, can it be a little cheaper? It's really useful in China, but it won't work if you are in something like a large department store where bargaining isn't allowed. At this point, can you count 人民币 in Chinese? We're going to learn how to do this and much more in the next lesson. I'll be waiting for you in our next 三分钟汉语 lesson. 再见。
Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer more of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I say no to an invitation politely? Chinese people are known to be very friendly and hospitable, especially when they know you're from another country and learning Chinese. You're probably going to be invited to their house for dinners or parties that you may not want to go to. How do you turn down these invitations without being rude? It would be ideal if a simple 不用了,谢谢, no thank you, would do. But the reality is, Chinese people always try to avoid using the word no. To turn down an invitation, you usually will first apologize for not being able to make it. Then give the reasons why you can't go, just like in the following conversation. 明天有空吗?来我家吃晚饭吧。Are you free tomorrow? Come have dinner at my place. 真不好意思，明天晚上我要上课，改天吧。I'm so sorry, I have to go to a class tomorrow night. Let's do it another time. In this conversation, person B didn't say no. Instead, she explained why she couldn't go and suggested doing it another time. This is the Chinese way. You don't want to say the word can't, 不行, or won't do, 不好, and you'll want to explain why. Many times you don't even have to give the real reason. You can use a very vague term like 我有别的事情, I have other things to tend to, or 我有别的安排, I have other plans. So if you don't want to go to a party and don't feel like giving the real reason, you might say 不好意思，我有别的事情去不了了。你们玩得开心 Saying no or turning down an invitation is not always easy. I believe it's not only difficult in the Chinese culture, but in many other cultures too. It's human nature that you don't want to say the word no. I hope after today's lesson you will find a way of saying no properly and politely in Chinese. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. That's all for today. 我们今天就到这里 and I'll see you in the next episode. 我们下期再见吧。Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the difference between Mandarin and Chinese? Sometimes people say they speak Chinese, and sometimes they use the word Mandarin. The two words seem almost interchangeable. Mandarin, also known as Standard Chinese, 普通话, is the official language of mainland China and Taiwan. It's also one of the 4 official languages of Singapore. It's the national language that's taught in schools, and it's based on the standard dialect spoken in Beijing, the capital city of China. While Chinese is a more general term, it refers to a group of languages spoken by the Han people, an ethnic group of East Asia. Chinese language includes a variety of regional dialects, such as Mandarin, Cantonese, Shanghainese, etc. As a matter of fact, each town has its own dialect. When people from different areas talk to each other in their own dialect, chances are they won't be able to understand each other. For example, in Shanghainese, people greet each other by saying 侬好, whereas in Cantonese, people say 你好. That is why a common dialect is needed for more effective communication throughout the whole country. With a standard dialect, we can all greet each other by saying 你好, and nobody gets confused. Since most Chinese people speak Mandarin, when people refer to the Chinese language, they often mean Mandarin. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you in the next episode. 我们下期再见吧。Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what are Chinese characters? Chinese characters, 汉字, are logograms. These are symbols used to represent whole words. They're used in written Chinese. In English, we use an alphabet to spell out each word. However, most letters on their own don't carry a particular meaning. In Chinese, characters come with an assigned pronunciation and their own definitions. You can combine certain characters together to make words. Most Chinese words are made of 1 to 3 characters. For example, 我, I, 喜欢, like, 冰淇淋, ice cream. As you may know, Chinese culture has had a great influence on all the cultures in East Asia. Chinese characters are a great example. Hanzi have been brought to and modified in several other Asian languages, including Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese. There are 50,000 Chinese characters in existence, but don't be scared away. You only need 3,000 to 5,000 to be considered literate. It may still sound like a lot, and it does take time to memorize them, but it's not an impossible task. You can start by learning the components of characters, which are called radicals, 偏旁部首. This will make it much easier to recognize, remember, and reproduce characters. For example, the character 明 is made of 2 radicals, 日 and 月, sun and moon. When you put the radicals sun and moon together, we get the character 明. The most common meaning for the symbol is bright. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you in the next episode. 我们下期再见吧。Bye. Hi everybody, Andrew here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what is Pinyin? Pinyin is the standard, most commonly used phonetic system for transliterating Chinese, meaning spelling out Chinese using Roman letters. When you look up a word in a Chinese dictionary, there's always Pinyin assigned to each Chinese character. It's a way to read and pronounce Chinese words through English letters. For example, Han, spelled as H-A-N, is the pinyin for the symbol Han, as in Hanzu Ren, the Han people, an ethnic group of East Asia. Even though most Chinese people can read pinyin, it's not a substitute for the Hanzi, or the Chinese characters. This is because pinyin is the sound system in Chinese, whereas Hanzi is the writing system. Here's an example for the sentence, I can read Chinese characters in Pinyin and in Hanzi. 我认识汉字. Sometimes people wonder if they can only learn Pinyin and ignore the actual Chinese characters. The short answer is no. Chinese books and newspapers are written with Chinese characters without the use of Pinyin, unless they're written for children who are still learning to read. So for Chinese beginners, you definitely want to learn Pinyin rule first. Pinyin is usually made of 3 parts: an initial consonant, a final consisting of one or a combination of vowels, and a tone. There's a Pinyin chart for beginners to learn and memorize the consonants and vowels. We'll get into the pronunciations of some of the most difficult Pinyin sounds in the later episodes. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见. See you in the next episode. Bye. Hi everybody, Andrew here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what are traditional and simplified characters in Chinese? Do I need to learn both? Traditional characters are the original Chinese characters. They were used in China before the 1950s and are still in use in many areas outside mainland China, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other Southeast Asian countries that speak Chinese. To increase literacy, simplified Chinese, which has less strokes, has been adopted. It was established as the official writing system by the government in mainland China. Therefore, nowadays, simplified Chinese is used in mainland China and traditional Chinese is used mostly outside mainland China. Let's look at how traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese are different from each other. Happy, 快乐, 快乐. Study, 学习, 学习. Weather, 天气, 天气. Due to the similarities between the two writing systems, someone who is familiar with one writing system may be able to decipher characters in the other. Traditional Chinese is often considered to be more authentic because it's rooted directly in the ancient forms. However, it's not necessary to learn both at the same time. Just pick one depending on where you want to visit or live. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见. See you in the next episode. Hi everybody, Andrew here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the different tones in Chinese? Many Chinese learners find the tones quite difficult because the intonation in Chinese is very special and very different from most other languages. There are 4 stress tones in Chinese. Let's run through them now. First tone, 一声, is high and steady. Ah. Second tone, 二声, starts with a little lower pitch and goes up. Ah. Third tone, 三声, is even lower. It first dips down, then rises. Ah. Fourth tone, 四声, starts high, then falls sharply. Ah. In addition to the above 4 tones, there's a special tone called neutral tone, 轻声. It doesn't come with any marks on top. To make the neutral tone, try to say it as in the first tone, except that you say it in a more light and short way, like ah. It's not only important, but crucial to master different tones in Chinese. There are so many words that come with the same pinyin spelling. If you don't get the tones right, it's very likely that your mispronounced tones will lead to misunderstandings or even embarrassment. A quick example. The pinyin and tone for Hanyu is with the 4th falling tone on Han, Hanyu. The pinyin and tone for Hanyu has a 2nd rising tone on Han, Hanyu. They sound quite close, right? But Hanyu is Chinese language, and Hanyu is actually Korean language. Don't get them mixed up and be very careful with the tones. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们今天就到这里，下期再见。See you in the next episode. Bye. Hi everyone, Andrew here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I pronounce the pinyin initials C, Q, X, Z, DH? Most pinyin initials or consonants have very similar pronunciations to their English counterparts, but there are a few sounds that may not sound the way you'd expect. Now let's look at some of the difficult consonants to pronounce in Chinese pinyin. C sounds like ts, as in 菜, vegetable or dish, 醋, vinegar, and 猜错, to get something wrong. Z sounds like z, as in 汉字, Chinese characters, 儿子, son, 自己, oneself. Q sounds like qi, but with a flat tongue and a flat mouth. For example, qi, energy, 钱, money, 亲戚, relatives. Another initial sound that may be different from English or your mother tongue is X. It sounds like xi, but once again, your tongue is flat here. Xi, west, 小, small, 谢谢, thank you, and 学校, school. Now let's look at the double initial ZH. You may see it in some very common Chinese family names like Zhang, Zhou, Zheng, and in this word, 中国, China. ZH sounds like the first sound in jerky, with the tip of the tongue raised against the hard palate. Try 战争, war, 珍珠, pearl, 这种, this kind. As some of you may be wondering, aren't consonants or pinyin initials supposed to be quiet, without the vibration of vocal cords? Why do Chinese teachers and friends say 波, ci, de, fo, ge instead of b, c, de, f, ge? Well, it's because when Chinese people learn pinyin at school, they're taught to pronounce them with a vowel to make the sounds clearer and easier to say. So Chinese may pronounce all the initials as 波, ci, de, fo, ge, he, ji, ke, le, mo, 呢、坡、七、日、斯、特、西、兹、吃、诗、之。这些词你都会念了吗？我们这个系列怎么样？有趣吗？你喜欢吗？ Can you pronounce all these words now? How's our series? Is it interesting? Do you like it? How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. That's all for today. 今天就到这里. I'll see you in the next episode. 我们下期再见. Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I pronounce yu, yue? In Pinyin, there are 6 single vowels called finals. A, O, I, U, Yu. There are also numerous compound finals. These are made by combining 2 or 3 of the single vowels, or by adding an or at the end of vowels. Here are some examples. Ao, O, A, Ye, Yu, Wen, Yan, Yong, and so on. The yu, yue are the relatively difficult ones for non-Chinese native speakers to pronounce. First, let's look at how to say the final accurately. Sounds like the E in the. Make sure your tongue is flat and low. A lot of Chinese learners turn to curl their tongue when saying which is not necessary. Let's look at some examples. 哥哥, 可乐, 喝, 车. Unlike the vowel yu has 2 little dots on top. To make this sound, try to round up your lips as much as you can. For example, 女儿, 绿色. There's a special rule concerning the omission of the 2 dots on yu. When it follows the initials yi, ji, qi, and xi, it's spelled as u, but still pronounced as yu. For example, 鱼, 句子, 去, and 必须. This rule also applies to any compound finals that starts with yu. For example, 均 or 圆圈. Yue sounds like the combination of yu and as in 省略, 虐待. Just like other vowels that start with yu, you don't need the 2 dots on top when they come after yi, ji, qi, xi. In this case, we have 月亮, 决定, 缺少, 学习. 这些规律你都学会了吗？多读，多听，多练。拼音其实并没有这么难。How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见. See you in the next episode. Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the rule of pronunciation for 不 and 一? When studying Chinese, you've probably seen these 2 characters often, 不 and 一. They are very, very common, but you may notice that their tones change when they come before certain words. For example, 不 is the 2nd rising tone in 不要, but it's the 4th falling tone in 不好. 一 as in number 1 is pronounced as 一, but in 一样, it becomes the 2nd tone. In 一起, it's the 4th tone. Seems very confusing, right? Don't worry, there are some rules we can follow to use the correct tones. When 不 is used alone, it's always the fourth tone, 不. When 不 is followed by a character with a fourth tone, it changes to the second tone, 不. For example, 不是, 不会, 不错. When 不 is followed by a non-fourth tone, which are the first, second, and third tones, it's pronounced as the fourth tone, as in 不知道, 不行, 不好. When E is used as a number, it's the first flat tone, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 第一, 一号线. When E is followed by a fourth tone, it changes to the second tone, 一样, 一定, 一次. When E is followed by a non-fourth tone, it becomes the fourth tone, 一般, 一种, 一点儿. Now you know the rules. How do you pronounce this phrase? Let's work backwards. The second E is followed by a fourth tone, 样. So E here should be the second rising tone, 一样. Now the 不 here is followed by a second tone, 一. So 不 here should be the fourth tone, 不一样. Now the first E is followed by a fourth tone, 不. So the first E itself should be the second tone, 一不一样. So problem solved. This phrase is pronounced as 一不一样. 你还有什么不懂的地方吗？请给我们留言，我们一定会给你回复。How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见，拜。Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, does 你好 really mean hi? 你好 and hi, are these two greetings the same? Actually, they're not. 你好 in Chinese is a very formal greeting. It's usually used when people meet for the first time. You can use it in self-introductions such as 你好，我叫玛丽。你好，很高兴认识你。Or you can use 你好 as a phrase to get a stranger's attention when you need to ask a question or favor. For example, you need to get to some place, so you may stop a passerby by saying 你好，请问一下，电影院怎么走？ Or when you're ordering food in a restaurant, you may say 你好，我要一份1号套餐。Well, if 你好 is used in formal situations with people you don't really know, how do you greet people you do know? Well, it's definitely not necessary to use 你好 to your best friends when you bump into them on the street. You can simply say hi to them in English, or the Chinese version, hi. This is essentially a translation from English. Hi is a very popular greeting among young people, so feel free to use it as you do in English. If you haven't seen your friend for a while, you may say, Hi 玛丽，好久不见，最近好吗? Or you can simply say their name and then continue with some small talk. For example, it's mealtime. You could say, 玛丽，吃了吗? This is a very informal greeting, but so commonly used. After all, eating is a big deal in Chinese culture. What if you're greeting someone you know, but they're your supervisor or your senior? To make it more polite, you can address them by their title, then add a 好 after the title. Say you see your teacher, it's considered polite to greet them by saying 某某老师好. If the teacher's name is Li, you'll say 李老师好. If you see your manager Li, you can say 李经理好. Many times when at work, even if the person you're greeting is the same level as you, or even at a lower level, it's still common to address them by their surname followed by the title. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见，拜拜。Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I say excuse me in Chinese? As an English learner, I found the English phrase excuse me extremely useful. You can use it in many circumstances. I've been asked by my students if there is one literal translation or phrase just like it in Chinese. Unfortunately, there isn't. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to say excuse me in different circumstances. Scenario number 1. You want to get someone's attention, so you can wave at them and say 你好. It's easy and polite. In a restaurant, you may say to a waiter, 你好，点餐. If you're lost in a shopping mall and try to find the elevator, you may ask a sales lady or shopper by saying, 你好，请问电梯在哪里? Scenario number 2. You're passing through a big crowd. You might say, 借过一下. The literal translation for this is, borrow your way a little. So you're on a crowded train at rush hour and you need to get off. Just elbow your way out and say, 借过一下，我下车. Scenario number 3. You need to apologize. For example, you have to excuse yourself from a conversation to answer an important phone call, or you just sneeze really loudly. You can apologize by saying, 抱歉. Or in this case of a phone call, 抱歉，我接个电话。抱歉，我要离开一会儿，马上就回来。How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 再见. Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use the final particle a? In Chinese language, especially colloquial Chinese, you'll often see the particles at the end of a sentence. They usually don't have any substantive meanings themselves, but they do play a very important role in carrying out the intonation of a sentence. We call those final particles. Words like ma, ba, a, o are all particles that appear at the end of a sentence to show the emotions of the speaker. Today we'll be talking about one of the most common final particle, a. Generally speaking, a can be put at the end of a greeting, a question, an exclamation, or imperative. It can often soften the tone, strengthen the emotion, and make the conversation more colloquial. Let's look at some examples. When you want to say, who is it? You can say, 是谁? This sounds very intense. But if you say, 是谁啊? The tone is much softer and less interpersonal. To agree with someone, you can use the word 好, 对, 是, etc. Many times you will hear 好啊, 对呀, 是啊 in conversations. For example, 这里的人好多啊 So many people here. 是啊，对啊，每天都这样 Yeah, it's like this every day. 今天天气真好啊 It's an exclamation. We use to emphasize the fact that the weather is really very nice. 快吃啊 is an imperative. You will often hear parents say that to their kids to make them hurry up and eat their food. Here's another example of how to use 动物园里有很多动物，老虎啊、狮子啊、大象啊、 骆驼啊、长颈鹿啊等等。There are lots of animals in the zoo, such as tigers, lions, elephants, camels, giraffes, and so on. Here is used when listing a series of things in spoken language. Generally speaking, is a final particle we use in colloquial language to make the speech softer, less abrupt, and more conversational. 是不是很有意思啊？ How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. I'll see you in the next episode. 我们下期再见。Bye. Hi everyone, Yinru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, does Chinese have a future tense? Just like there's no past tense in Chinese, there's no future tense in Chinese either. You can indicate something is going to happen in the future by using the auxiliary words 会, 要, and or add future time phrases like 明天, tomorrow, 下个月, next month, and so on. 会 can be translated as will or will expect to. In comparison, 要 indicates one's intention, like to be going to or to want to. Let's look at some examples. 明晚我会去看电影. Tomorrow night I will go see a movie. 你要跟我一起去吗? Do you want to go with me? 下个星期我会去上海. I will go to Shanghai next week. To make negative forms, just put a 不 in front of 会 and 要 to make it 不会, 不要. For example, 她不会喜欢这个地方的. She won't like this place. 我不要跟你一起去上海. I am not going to go to Shanghai with you. Some more time phrases expressing the future include 下星期三, next Wednesday, 后天, the day after tomorrow, 明年, next year, 以后, in the future. 我下星期三会给你打电话. Next Wednesday, I'll give you a call. 你明年要毕业了吗? Are you going to graduate next year? 以后我不会再来了. I will not come again in the future. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下期再见. See you in the next episode. Bye. Hi everybody, Yinru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use the adverb 就? Today we're going to show you how to use the word 就 in 3 ways. Here's the first usage. It's used before a verb to suggest the earliness and quickness of the action. For example, if someone says, 你就来了啊? The implied meaning is, oh, you're here already? I didn't expect you to be here so soon. 我5点就到家了. I got home at 5. Here it's implied that at 5 is considered early. 他1分钟就学会了. He got it within 1 minute. Second usage. It's used to connect 2 actions, indicating that the second action, which is the action following 就, happens as soon as the first action is completed. Let's see some examples. 我吃完早饭就去上班了. As soon as I finished my breakfast, I went to work. 我写完报告就把电脑关了. I turned off the computer after I finished writing my report. 你一下飞机就打车回家了吗? Did you get a cab and go home as soon as you got off the plane? Third and final usage. It's also used as a conjunction word, indicating that the second action or situation which follows 就 is the result of the first action or situation. 你喜欢吃就多吃点。Since you like it, eat more. 要是你不打电话给我，我就打电话给你。If you don't call me, then I'll call you. 既然她不喜欢唱歌，我们就不去卡拉 OK. Since she doesn't like to sing, we're not going to karaoke. Karaoke is a very popular entertainment in China. You will see lots of KTVs, which are karaoke places with private karaoke rooms of different sizes. These places usually serve food and beverages. 你喜欢卡拉 OK 吗？喜欢的话，我们现在就去。Do you like karaoke? If you do, let's go now. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们今天就到这里，下期再见。See you in the next episode. Bye. Hi everyone, welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, why do I hear 一下 and 一点 a lot? 一下 and 一点 or 一点 as people from North China would pronounce it, are used in everyday language to soften the tone in imperatives. 一下 literally means one time, and 一点 literally means a little bit. Just a side note, people in North China like to use 儿化音 in their speech. 儿化音 refers to the phenomenon of adding the sound of 儿 at the end of a word. For example, people in the South say 没事, it's okay. People from the North would say 没事儿. People in the South say 好玩, fun, while people in North China like to say 好玩. Let's compare some sentences with and without 一下 and 一点。你过来 versus 你过来一下。The first sentence sounds like an order, come here. The second one sounds more like a polite request, come here for a second. 你喝茶 versus 你喝一点茶。The first one sounds like a parent commanding you, drink your tea. The second one, on the other hand, is more loving, like saying, have some tea, honey. Since nobody wants to sound mean when they don't have to, you'll hear verb plus 一下 or 一点 in spoken Chinese. Sometimes you can omit the 一 in 一点. You can either say, 来一点咖啡吧, let's have some coffee, or 来点咖啡吧. Or as people from North would say it with 儿化音, 来点咖啡吧. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们下次再见吧. See you next time. Bye. Hi everybody, Yiru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the proper word order in a sentence? Unlike the pronunciation and writing system, sentence structure in Chinese is not as confusing and exotic. For most simple sentences, word order in Chinese is similar to that in English. Let's look at some basic SVO sentences, which are sentences with subject plus verb plus object word order. 我爱你, I love you. The subject is 我, the verb I, and the object 你, just like in English. 他吃面, he eats noodles. The subject is 他, the verb 吃, and the object 面. If you want to add a time phrase in a sentence, you usually put this phrase after subject. For example, 他星期二吃面. He eats noodles on Tuesdays. 我一直很爱你. I always love you. 你昨天晚上洗澡了吗? Did you take a shower last night? If you want to add a place in a sentence, like where someone does something, you also put it after the subject, before the verb. Let's see a couple of examples. 他在家吃面. He eats noodles at home. 我的好朋友在伦敦工作. My good friend works in London. What if we have a time and a place at the same time? Usually, we put time after the subject, then place, then verb, or verb plus object. For example, 我的好朋友去年在伦敦工作. My good friend worked in London last year. 他们上个星期六晚上在电影院看电影. They saw a movie at a movie theater last Saturday night. Of course, there are exceptions to the rules, and many times components are omitted in different cases, but the above word order is the basic foundation for sentence structure in Chinese. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们再见吧. Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some useful tips for someone visiting China for the first time? Visiting China is exciting and very beneficial for your Chinese learning as well. But before you go, there are some tips I would love to share with you. Tip number 1. Take very good care of your valuables, especially at train stations, bus stops, airports, busy streets, and tourist attractions. Things get stolen within seconds. That's why a lot of women carry their backpacks in front of them. Tip number 2. Always bring toilet paper to public restrooms. Most Chinese public restrooms don't have toilet paper or paper towels. Some may not have hand soap either, so it's good to be prepared. Tip number 3. Expect people to be rude. People may stare if you have a non-Asian face, especially at places that don't usually have foreign visitors. People may cut in line, people may spit and sneeze right in front of you, people may talk loudly in public, and smokers may smoke in non-smoking areas. Just remember, these behaviors are something that Chinese are not proud of, but are still pretty common in China. Tip number 4. Internet is censored in China. That means no Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Google unless you use a VPN. Tip number 5. Be aware of the cleanliness of some local restaurants and street food. The food may look very good, but it's very likely you'll get sick from it. Bring some medications with you just to be safe. Tip number 6. Make an attempt to speak Mandarin to Chinese people. They will love it and make your stay more enjoyable. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? China is definitely a wonderful place to visit. I didn't give you these tips to scare you away. They're just something you might want to know to make your trip more pleasant. If you have visited China before, please share your tips and experience with us. We'd love to hear your stories. I'll see you next time. 我们下次再见. Bye. Hi everybody, Inru here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer most of your common Chinese questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I decipher Chinese characters I don't know? As we mentioned in an early lesson, you need to know at least 5,000 Hanzi to be able to read. Does that mean you have to memorize every single one of them? Not necessarily. Each character is made of components, which many times indicate or give hints as to what the character means. These components are called radicals, or 偏旁部首. Learning some common radicals will help you recognize, remember, and reproduce characters. For example, the character 明 is made of two radicals, 日 and 月, meaning sun and moon. When you put the radical sun and moon together, we get the character 明, the most common meaning of which is bright. A lot of times when you see the radical 日 in a character, it often has something to do with the sun, like this character, 早, meaning early, and the word 早上, meaning morning. 水 means water. This radical is its variation. When you see them in a character, it usually means the character has something to do with water. 洗, to wash, 河, river, 海, ocean. 火 means fire, and this radical is its variation. When you see 火 and this radical, the character usually is related to fire or heat. Some examples are 热, hot, 烧, to burn, 灯, light, and 烟, smoke. 言 and this character are radicals for something related to speech, such as 说, to say, 语, language, 词, word, 誓言, promise. 时 and this radical are radicals for anything related to food and drinks. For example, 饭, meal or rice, 饱, full, 饿, hungry, 餐馆, restaurant. Learning Chinese characters does take a lot of time and effort, but the result sure is rewarding. After you learn some basic Chinese characters, you'll even find it easier to navigate in some other countries like Japan, since Hanzi is also part of their writing system. So if you've decided to learn Hanzi, I recommend that you start with radicals. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them all in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. 我们再见吧. Bye everyone.
Welcome to Can Do Chinese by ChineseClass101.com.
大家好，我是李英如. Hi everyone, I'm Yinru Li. In this lesson, you will learn how to introduce yourself in Chinese.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to China. Zhang Ju, a passenger sitting next to him, introduces himself by saying, "Hello, my name is Zhang Ju. Pleased to meet you."
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Ready?
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。
Once more with the English translation.
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
Hello, my name is Zheng Chu. Pleased to meet you.
你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。
Hello, my name is Mark Lee. Pleased to meet you.
Let's take a closer look at Mark's response.
Do you remember how Mark Lee introduces himself? Hello, my name is Mark Lee. Pleased to meet you.
"你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。"
First is
你好，
meaning hello.
你好，你好。
This is a commonly used greeting, and it is often said when meeting people for the first time. This starts with the word
你
you.
你
Next is the word
好
good.
好
Together, it's
你好
This phrase literally means you good, but translates as hello.
你好
Pronunciation note. When there are two third tones in a row, the first one changes to the second tone. Listen to the pronunciation again.
你好你好
This pronunciation change is not reflected in the Pinyin, as you will still see two third tones. Before we look at how Mark introduces his name, let's look at the last part of Mark's response.
很高兴认识你，
Nice to meet you, or pleased to meet you.
很高兴认识你，
First is
很
very.
很
This is followed by
高兴
translating as pleased in this context.
高兴高兴
Next is
认识
to know.
认识认识
Last is the word
你
you.
你
Altogether,
很高兴认识你，
literally, very pleased to know you, but it translates as pleased to meet you.
很高兴认识你，
When meeting someone for the first time, you'll often hear this phrase, but omitting it in favor of a simple
你好，
is often enough. Do you remember how Mark Lee says, "My name is Mark Lee"?
我叫马克里，
First is
我
I.
我
Next is the word
叫
which translates as to be called.
叫
Together, it's
我叫
literally, I'm called, but it translates as my name is.
我叫
This phrase is used to introduce one's own name. Next is Mark Lee's name.
马克里，
Note, there is often a short pause between the first and the last name. For example,
马克里，
first is Mark's given name,
马克
Mark.
马克
Followed by his family name,
李
Lee.
李
Altogether,
我叫马克里，
I am called Mark Lee.
我叫马克里。
When giving foreign names in Chinese, the name order follows the order of the original language. For example, Mark Lee translates to
马克里，
as the name order in English is given name followed by family name. For Chinese names, the order is family name followed by given names. Zhang Ju uses this order when he says
我叫朱正，
his family name
朱
is followed by his given name.
正
The pattern is
我叫 name，
my name is name.
我叫 name，
To use this pattern, simply replace the name placeholder with your name. Imagine you're Karen Lee. In Chinese,
凯伦里，凯伦里，凯伦里，
say, my name is Karen Lee. Ready?
我叫凯伦里，
My name is Karen Lee.
我叫凯伦里。
When introducing yourself as a Chinese learner, you might want to use just your given name. 我叫凯伦. My name is Karen. 我叫凯伦. You can feel free to use the name you would like to be called.
Let's look at some examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫凯伦里，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫凯伦里，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫李音如，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫李音如，很高兴认识你。
你好，我是李林，很高兴认识你。你好，我是李林，很高兴认识你。
Did you notice how the last speaker uses a different sentence pattern?
She says,
我是李林，
I'm Lin Li.
我是李林。
First is
我
I.
我
Next is,
是
in this case, it's like the am in I am.
是
Together,
我是
I am.
我是
Last is the speaker's name.
李林
Note the name order, last name,
李
followed by given name.
林
Altogether,
我是李林
I'm Lin Li.
我是李林
This is also a common way to introduce yourself. The pattern is
我是 name
I am name.
我是 name
Do you remember my introduction at the start of the lesson? 我是李音如。I'm 音如李。我是李音如。My introduction follows the pattern of 我是 name. I am name. 我是 name.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the sentence pattern.
我叫 name
My name is name.
我叫 name
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say hello? 你好。你好。And how to say I? 我。Do you remember how to say Mark Lee in Chinese? 马克里。马克里。Do you remember how Mark Lee says, My name is Mark Lee? 我叫马克里。我叫马克里。Do you remember how to say, Pleased to meet you? 很高兴认识你。很高兴认识你。Do you remember how Mark Lee says, Hello, my name is Mark Lee. Pleased to meet you.
你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫马克里，很高兴认识你。Do you remember how Zheng Zhu says, "Hello, my name is Zheng Zhu. Pleased to meet you."
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
Let's practice. Imagine you're
凯伦里
respond to Zheng Zhu's self-introduction. Ready?
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫凯伦里，很高兴认识你。
Listen again and repeat.
你好，我叫凯伦里，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫凯伦里，很高兴认识你。
Let's try another. Imagine you're
李林
ready?
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫李林，很高兴认识你。
Listen again and repeat.
你好，我叫李林，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫李林，很高兴认识你。
Let's try one more. Imagine you're
李英如
ready?
你好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识你。
你好，我叫李英如，很高兴认识你。
Listen again and repeat.
你好，我叫李英如，很高兴认识你。你好，我叫李英如，很高兴认识你。When speaking with your elders or people of higher social status, it's recommended to use 您, the honorific term for you, instead of 你. 您, you, in honorific speech. 您, 您. So to sound more respectful, Zheng Zhu, who is younger than Mark, could say, 您好，我叫朱正，很高兴认识您。This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try anytime you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done! Now you know how to introduce yourself in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done! Now you know how to introduce yourself in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson.
Welcome to Can-Do Chinese by ChineseClass101.com.
大家好，我是李音如。Hi everyone, I'm Yinru Li. In this lesson, you will learn how to tell someone where you're from in Chinese.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to China. Zhang Ju, a passenger sitting next to him, asks him, "Where are you from?"
你是哪里人？
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Ready?
你是哪里人？
我是美国人。
Once more with the English translation.
你是哪里人？
Where are you from?
我是美国人。
I'm an American.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Zheng Zhu asks, "Where are you from?"
你是哪里人？
First is
你
you.
你
Next is
是
here, it's like the R in you are.
是
Together,
你是
you are.
你是
Next is
哪里
where.
哪里
Pronunciation note. When there are two third tones in a row, the first one changes to the second tone. Listen to the pronunciation again.
哪里
The pronunciation differs from the pinyin, where you will still see two third tones. After this,
人
person.
人
Together,
哪里人
literally means where person.
哪里人
Altogether, it's
你是哪里人
literally, you are where person, but it translates as, where are you from?
你是哪里人？
Remember this question. You'll hear it again later in this lesson.
Now, let's take a closer look at the response.
Do you remember how Mark Lee says, "I'm an American"?
我是美国人。
First is
我
I.
我
Next is
是
here, it's like the am in I am.
是
Together,
我是
I am.
我是
Next is
美国
which literally means beautiful country, but it translates as the United States of America.
美国
Last is
人
person.
人
Together,
美国人
literally means United States of America person or an American.
美国人
Note,
美国人
is a noun, not an adjective. Altogether,
我是美国人
means I'm an American.
我是美国人。
The pattern is
我是 home country 人
I'm a noun for person of home country.
我是 home country 人
To use this pattern, simply replace the home country placeholder with the name of your country. Imagine you're from Australia in Chinese.
澳大利亚澳大利亚澳大利亚
Say, I'm an Australian. Ready?
我是澳大利亚人。
I'm an Australian.
我是澳大利亚人。
Let's look at some examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
我是美国人。我是美国人。
我是中国人。我是中国人。
我是澳大利亚人。我是澳大利亚人。
我是加拿大人。我是加拿大人。
我是英国人。我是英国人。
我是武汉人。我是武汉人。Did you notice how I used a city name in place of a country name? 我是武汉人。I'm a Wuhan person. 我是武汉人。I used a city name, 武汉 Wuhan, in place of a country name, 中国 China.
武汉
Wuhan.
武汉武汉
You can use this response to answer the question.
你是哪里人
The key word in the question is
哪里
where. In addition to countries, it can refer to any place, including cities and towns. This pattern is
我是 hometown 人
I'm a hometown person.
我是 hometown 人
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern
我是 home country 人
I'm a noun for person of home country.
我是 home country 人
Let's review the key vocabulary.
中国人
Chinese person,
中国人中国人英国人
British person,
英国人英国人加拿大人
Canadian person,
加拿大人加拿大人
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say United States of America? 美国, 美国. And how to say person? 人, 人. Do you remember how to say an American? 美国人, 美国人. And how to say I? 我, 我. Do you remember how Mark says, I'm an American?
我是美国人。
我是美国人。Do you remember how to say you? 你，你。And how to say where? 哪里，哪里。Do you remember how Zhengzhu asks, Where are you from?
你是哪里人？
你是哪里人？ Do you remember how to say British person? 英国人，英国人。And how to say Chinese person? 中国人，中国人。
Let's practice. Imagine you're Jack Jones from the United Kingdom. Respond to Zhengzhu's question. Ready?
你是哪里人？
我是英国人。
Listen again and repeat.
我是英国人。我是英国人。
Let's try another. Imagine you're Justin Jackson from Canada. Ready?
你是哪里人？
我是加拿大人。
Listen again and repeat.
我是加拿大人。我是加拿大人。
Let's try one more. Imagine you're Yinru Li from China. Ready?
你是哪里人？
我是中国人。
Listen again and repeat.
我是中国人。我是中国人。This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try anytime you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done! Now you know how to say where you're from in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done! Now you know how to say where you're from in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson.
Welcome to Can-Do Chinese by ChineseClass101.com.
大家好，我是李英如。Hi everyone, I'm Yinru Li. In this lesson, you will learn how to talk about your occupation in Chinese.
This is Mark Li, and he's on a plane to China. He asks the passenger sitting next to him, Zheng Zhu, "Are you a student?"
你是学生吗？
Listen to the conversation and focus on Zheng's response. Ready?
你是学生吗？
我不是学生，我是投资商。
Once more with the English translation.
你是学生吗？
Are you a student?
我不是学生，我是投资商。
I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Mark asks, "Are you a student?"
你是学生吗？
First is
你
you,
你
next is
是
here, it's like the R in are you.
是
After this is
学生
student.
学生
Last is
吗
this is a question marking particle.
吗
This particle turns the sentence into a question. Altogether, it's
你是学生吗
literally, you are student, but it translates as, are you a student?
你是学生吗？
Remember this question. You'll hear it again later.
Now, let's take a closer look at the response.
Do you remember how Zheng says, "I'm not a student, I'm an investor"?
我不是学生，我是投资商。
First, Zheng says,
我不是学生
"I'm not a student."
我不是学生
First is
我
I.
我
Next is
不是
here, am not, as in I am not.
不是
This starts with
不
not. It's used to form a negative.
不
Next is
是
here, am, as in I am not.
是
Together,
不是
here, am not.
不是
Pronunciation note: when
不
is followed by a fourth tone, its tone changes from the fourth tone to the second tone. Listen to the pronunciation again.
不是
Altogether,
我不是
I am not.
我不是
Next is
学生，
student.
学生。
Altogether,
我不是学生，
I'm not a student.
我不是学生，
Finally, Zheng says,
我是投资商，
I'm an investor.
我是投资商。
First is
我，
I.
我
Next is
是
here, am, as in I am.
是
After this is
投资商，
investor.
投资商，投资商。
Altogether, it's
我不是学生，我是投资商。
I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
我不是学生，我是投资商。
The pattern is
我不是，
occupation,
我是，
actual occupation. I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
我不是，
Occupation,
我是，
actual occupation. Imagine you're Emma Liu, a student.
学生，
Zheng asks you if you're a teacher.
老师，老师，老师。
Say, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student. Ready?
我不是老师，我是学生。
I'm not a teacher. I'm a student.
我不是老师，我是学生。
Let's look at some more examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
我不是学生，我是投资商。我不是学生，我是投资商。
我不是老师，我是学生。我不是老师，我是学生。
我不是老师，我是工程师。我不是老师，我是工程师。
我不是护士，我是医生。我不是护士，我是医生。
我不是学生，我是老师。我不是学生，我是老师。
不是，我是咖啡师。不是，我是咖啡师。
Did you notice how the last speaker starts by simply saying 不是?
不是，我是咖啡师。
No, I'm a barista.
不是，我是咖啡师。
When directly responding to someone's question, it's often possible to simply answer
不是，
here, no.
不是。
You are negating the incorrect statement and can then state your actual occupation. This pattern is
不是，我是。
occupation. No, I'm occupation.
不是， 我是
Occupation. You should be aware of this pattern. But for this lesson, we'll use the pattern
我不是
occupation,
我是
actual occupation. I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
我不是
Occupation,
我是
actual occupation. Let's review the key vocabulary.
老师
Teacher,
老师老师工程师
engineer,
工程师工程师护士
nurse,
护士护士医生
physician,
医生医生咖啡师
barista,
咖啡师咖啡师
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say investor? 投资商投资商 And how to say I? 我 Do you remember how Zheng says, I'm an investor? 我是投资商我是投资商 Do you remember how to say student? 学生学生 Do you remember how Zheng says, I'm not a student? 我不是学生我不是学生 And do you remember how Zheng says, I'm not a student, I'm an investor?
我不是学生，我是投资商。
我不是学生，我是投资商。Do you remember the question marking particle? 吗吗 And how to say you? 你你 Do you remember how Mark Lee asks, Are you a student?
你是学生吗？
你是学生吗 Do you remember how to say teacher? 老师老师 And how to say engineer? 工程师工程师
Let's practice. Imagine you're Mark Lee and you're an engineer. Respond to Zhang's question. Ready?
你是老师吗？
我不是老师，我是工程师。
Listen again and repeat.
我不是老师，我是工程师。我不是老师，我是工程师。
Let's try another. Imagine you're Yinru Li and you're a teacher. Ready?
你是学生吗？
我不是学生，我是老师。
Listen again and repeat.
我不是学生，我是老师。我不是学生，我是老师。
Let's try one more. Now, imagine you're Emma Liu and you're a student. Ready?
你是投资商吗？
我不是投资商，我是学生。
Listen again and repeat.
我不是投资商，我是学生。我不是投资商，我是学生。
This is the end of this lesson.
Remember, these can-do lessons are about learning practical language skills. What's next? Show us what you can do. When you're ready, take your assessment. You can take it again and again, so try any time you like. Our teachers will assess it and give you your results.
Well done. Now you know how to talk about your occupation in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. This is the end of this lesson.
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.
Well done. Now you know how to talk about your occupation in Chinese. That's all there is to it. Keep practicing and move on to the next lesson. Hi, 大家好，我是殷如。Hi everyone, I'm Yinru. In this lesson, we'll talk about how to make comparisons in Chinese. Comparing two things is easy and straightforward in Chinese. There is no change of word form, and there is one pattern that's always safe to use. Let's say you're comparing two places, place 1 and place 2. Here is how you do it. Place 1, 比, place 2, adjective. Okay, the key word in this pattern is 比. 比 means compared with. So the literal translation of this pattern is place 1 compared with place 2, adjective. Or in English, you would say place 1 is more adjective than place 2. So remember to put the two things you're comparing on each side of 比. And the one who wins, the one who is more adjective, goes first. And followed by 比, which is followed by place 2. and directly after that, there's nothing in between, use adjective. Okay, so again, the pattern is place 1, 比, place 2, adjective. That's it. So let's look at some examples. For example, you are comparing two Chinese cities. Okay, so in place 1, we use 成都. Chengdu is a city in the southwest part of China with all the spicy food. Okay, and place 2, we use Xi'an. Xi'an is in the northwest part of China with the terracotta soldiers. So if I say 成都比西安大, I mean Chengdu is bigger than Xi'an. 成都比西安大. All right, let's compare two cities outside China. Okay, so in the second simple sentence, place 1, we use 西雅图. 西雅图 is Seattle. Okay, and in place 2, we have 伦敦. 伦敦 is London. Okay, so far we know we're comparing Seattle with London, and Seattle apparently is more certain adjective than London. So what is that adjective? 雨水多. Well, technically speaking, 雨水多 is more of an adjective phrase. 雨水 means rain water or rain, and 多 means a lot. So 雨水多 means lots of rain or rainy. Okay, so 西雅图比伦敦雨水多 means Seattle is more rainy than London. Okay, 西雅图比伦敦雨水多. Now you should understand this pattern better, and you will be more happy to know that this pattern is not only limited to two places. Okay, you can use this pattern to compare any two things by using A, B, B, adjective. Okay, A is more adjective than B. So there you have it, a very common, useful, and fundamental pattern to make any comparisons in Chinese. Next, you're going to hear a dialogue between two friends. One is asking the other about his hometown. So while listening, I want you to pay attention to how the second person describes his hometown. Ready? 唐山小吗？唐山比北京小。Okay, once more, a bit slower. 唐山小吗？唐山比北京小。Okay, did you take note of how the comparison was made? Let's go over this dialogue line by line. The first line is 唐山, apparently it's a city name. 唐山小吗 is a question meaning, is 唐山 small? Is 唐山 small? So, while the second person first thought about it and made a thinking noise, which could translate to well, and then he made this comparison. 唐山比北京小, which means 唐山 is smaller than Beijing. Okay, let's just use TS for 唐山 is smaller than Beijing. Okay, so that's actually a pretty good answer because everything's relative. Is 唐山 small? 唐山小吗? Compared with Beijing, it's small. 唐山比北京小. Okay, so there are, when comparing two places, there are other common adjectives you can use in our main pattern. So for example, we have 冷. 冷 is an adjective meaning cold. So if you say 什么地方比什么地方冷, it means a certain place is colder than the other place. So for example, let's say 沈阳比北京冷. 沈阳 沈阳比北京 Well, since we know the pinyin for Beijing, I'll skip that. 沈阳比北京冷 means Shenyang is colder than Beijing. Okay. Well, we can also use 古老. 古老. 古老 means old or ancient. In particular, any place or any object that's old. So be careful not to use 古老 on people. So let's say 南京比迪拜古老。南京比迪拜 is Dubai. 迪拜 So 南京比迪拜古老 means Nanjing is older than Dubai. Okay, next one, the next adjective is 拥挤. 拥挤 means crowded. 拥挤. How about 上海比北京拥挤? Even though both cities are pretty crowded, but Shanghai wins this one, so let's put Shanghai first. 上海比 again 北京。上海比北京拥挤. Shanghai is more crowded than Beijing. Okay, next is the one we know that's in our dialogue. 小 means small. So 什么地方比什么地方小 means certain places smaller than the other place. Like 唐山比北京小. 比北京小. And the opposite of 小 is 大. Okay, 大 means big. So we talked about 成都比西安大. Chengdu is bigger than 西安. So 成都比西安大. And the last one is also what we mentioned before. 雨水多 means rainy. 西雅图比伦敦雨水多。西雅图比伦敦雨水多。All right, let's go over our adjectives one more time. 什么比什么冷 cold. And 古老 old or ancient. 古老。拥挤 crowded. 拥挤。小 small. 小。大 big. 大 and 雨水多 rainy. Now it's time to review. Do you remember how to say small? Xiao. Xiao. Do you remember how to say Beijing? Beijing. Beijing. And how to say Tangshan? Tangshan. Tangshan. Now do you remember how to say Tangshan is smaller than Beijing? Tangshan 比北京小。唐山比北京小。Do you remember how to say big? 大。大。And how to say cold? 冷。冷。Do you remember how to say rainy? 雨水多。雨水多。Do you remember how to say old? 古老, 古老. And do you remember how to say crowded? 拥挤, 拥挤. Well done! In this lesson, you've learned how to make basic comparisons in Chinese. That's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching. I'm Yinru, and I'll see you again on ChineseClass101.com. 再见!
Expand your vocabulary with our Core 2000 Words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free Chinese ebook before it's gone.